All right. So, what's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary. The time is about 4 p.m. and it's April 12th, 2024. And some big news dropped on my channel. I actually got the news from one of my longtime subscribers, supporters, commentators. His name is Craig Mack. He sent me the news that OJ died at 76 years old, supposedly from cancer. That was the exact words of his comment. I forgot exactly what video it's under. He's always leaving some dope comments and suggestions for videos and topics for me to cover. So shout out to Craig Mack. And if anybody else has stories that you want me to cover, just drop a link or drop the title of the story or whatever big news event you want me to cover, and I'll jump onto that. So Craig Mack says, "What up, Simon? That's me." Yep. Shout out to Craig Mack. He's up in the chat right now. So today, we're going to be talking about OJ, his controversial legacy, the impact he made on American culture, and my thoughts about it. And I really want to do a live stream about this with my wife, Acti. And I think actually we're going to be doing a review of OJ Made in America, the documentary that was made about him. That was absolutely fantastic. It's about 5 episodes long. If you haven't seen it, stop watching this live stream now and turn on that. Also, watch the dramatized version of the OJ trial that they made a series about, starring John Travolta and Cuba Gooding Jr. as OJ. I forgot the exact name. I watched that too, and that was fantastic as well. And I'll be honest with y'all, I'm a millennial. I was born in 1990. When OJ was happening, I was 5, 4, 3, 4, 5 years old, right? The whole thing. And it escaped me because, of course, my age. And then all I know about OJ is basically like, Tupac references. And that's why I titled this video, Free Like OJ All Day. And my opinion about OJ Simpson is that he was found innocent of murder. First and foremost, this man was not a murderer. If you're going to call OJ Simpson a murderer, is George Zimmerman a murderer? Is Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer? Let's keep it absolutely a buck. If OJ was found innocent in the court of law, the same court of law that the white supremacists and the dominant society says is always correct, they never get anything wrong. They're still fighting for Derek Chauvin to get released from jail, and all the police that shoot black men in the back out of jail, and they defend their innocence, or they at least try to justify the murder that they committed. I will never ever say that OJ killed anybody. And that's what I think God wanted him to do. God put OJ on this earth, knew what was going to happen to him, and he was going to let OJ's life be that permanent talking point, the permanent punch, the final KO that for any white supremacist who wants to excuse police killing innocent black men or excuse civilians murdering innocent black men or black women like Breonna Taylor, right? And those cops got away with it. Those people who want to support those people, we can always say OJ was innocent. And then that's when they have to backtrack. Then that's when they have to say, oh, no, OJ was a murderer. But then we have to say, oh, but I thought the criminal justice system never got anything wrong. I thought the criminal justice system was fair and balanced. You were judged by a jury of your peers. OJ was judged by a jury of his peers and found innocent of murder. He is not a murderer, period. That is my opinion on that. But I'm going to jump into the obituary, and I'm going to be reading some articles from the New York Times from their most prominent black writers. I don't care what the dominant society has to say about OJ. I'm just going to be reading what the black writers for the New York Times have to say about this. I also have so many other articles I've been meaning to get to, but I've been backed up with English classes, doing classes after classes, working hella hard. Craig Mack jumped into the comments. He says, I was in Akron, Ohio in the locker room watching the white Bronco on the highway with helicopters and hundreds of police cars following him. Yeah, like the white Bronco is like a part of American culture. Like if you're of a certain age, some people say like the OJ case is the permanent divide between like millennials and Gen Z. Like, but I really think OJ belongs to Gen X more than millennials, right? Because if you were, 4 or 5, I don't know if I'm considered a late millennial or a mid millennial, but yeah, watching the footage and stuff like that live must have been very different for millennials like me watching this just in like, VH1's I Love the 90s, right? And they throw the clip in there and make jokes about OJ and that sort of stuff. But I'm going to be reading the obituary and then jumping into the articles. If you got comments you want to say, let me know. Let's get into it. OJ Simpson, football star whose trial riveted the nation, dies at 76. He ran to football fame and made fortunes in movies. His trial for the murder of his former wife and her friend became an inflection point on race in America. Here's OJ here. Classic. Johnny Cochran right here. OG, classic. OJ Simpson and one of his defense lawyers, Johnny Cochran, celebrate in 1995 as a not guilty verdict is read during his trial. So this was written by Robert D. McFadden, published on April 11th, 2024. OJ Simpson, who ran to fame on the football field, made fortunes as an All-American in movies, television, and advertising, and was acquitted of killing his former wife and her friend in a 1995 trial in Los Angeles that mesmerized the nation. He died on Wednesday at his home in Las Vegas. He was 76. The cause was cancer, his family announced on social media. The jury in the murder trial cleared him, but the case, which had held up a cracked mirror to black and white America, changed the trajectory of his life. In 1997, a civil suit by the victims' families found him liable for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald L. Goldman and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages. He paid little of the debt, moved to Florida, and struggled to remake his life, raise his children, and stay out of trouble. In 2006, he sold a book manuscript titled If I Did It and a prospective TV interview giving a hypothetical account of murders he had always denied committing. A public outcry ended both projects, but Mr. Goldman's family secured the book rights, added material imputing guilt to Mr. Simpson, and had it published. In 2007, he was arrested after he and other men invaded a Las Vegas hotel room of some sports memorabilia dealers and took a trove of collectibles. He claimed that the items had been stolen from him, but a jury in 2008 found him guilty of 12 charges, including armed robbery and kidnapping, after a trial that drew only a smattering of reporters and spectators. He was sentenced to 9 to 33 years in Nevada State Prison. He served the minimum term and was released in 2017. I gotta be honest, I knew about OJ like before 2007, but around 2007, I was 16, 17. And that's when, more information started coming out in the media about OJ. And they started doing all those pieces about who he was. And it was impossible for OJ to get a fair trial in that case about him taking back his memorabilia, right? Like, I believe there were like comedians at the time, like Chris Rock and others who were on TV saying OJ is the only black man who got arrested for taking back his own stuff. And things like that. So I think, he didn't get a fair trial in that case. And, he got punished in return. Like, because, I don't know if like fighting a few guys over sports memorabilia is enough to warrant, that much time in jail, right? Like 10 years in jail for fighting over sports memorabilia. Continuing here. Over the years, the story of O.J. Simpson generated a tide of tell-all books, movies, studies, and debate over questions of justice, race relations, and celebrity in a nation that adores its heroes, especially those cast in rags to riches stereotypes, but that has never been comfortable with its deeper contradictions. There were many in the Simpson saga, yellowing old newspaper clippings yield the earliest portraits of a post-war child of poverty afflicted with rickets and forced to wear steel braces in his spindly legs, of a hard scrabble life in a bleak housing project, and of hanging with teenage gangs in the tough back streets of San Francisco where he learned to run. Running, man, that's what I do, he said in 1975 when he was one of America's best known and highest paid football players. The Buffalo Bills' electrifying, swivel-hipped ball carrier, known universally as the Juice. All my life, I've been a runner. Shout out to everything he did on the sports field, man. We're never going to take that away from him. I'm always going to say the best running back of all time is Mike Vick, but OJ is up there too. But keep in mind, guys, I am not into sports like that, so don't come for me for my sports takes. So this is OJ in 1973. That year, he became the first to rush for over 2,000 yards, breaking a record, and was named the NFL's most valuable player. And so he had running to daylight on the gridiron of the University of Southern California and in the roaring stadiums of the National Football League for 11 years, running for Hollywood movie moguls, for Madison Avenue image makers and for television networks, running to pinnacles of success in sports and entertainment. Along the way, he broke college and professional records, won the Heisman Trophy, and was enshrined in pro football's Hall of Fame. He appeared in dozens of movies and memorable commercials for Hertz and other clients. He was a sports analyst for ABC and NBC, acquired homes, cars, and a radiant family, and became an American Idol, a handsome warrior with the gentle eyes and soft voice of a nice guy. And he played golf. It was the good life on the surface, but there was a deeper, more troubled reality about an infant daughter drowning in the family pool and a divorce from his high school sweetheart and his stormy marriage to a stunning young waitress and her frequent calls to the police when he beat her, about the jealous rages of a frustrated man. So let's get into it, man. Like, nobody's gonna sit here and defend, OJ. What's documented, all the police reports, and by Nicole's own words, that he was abusive to her, that OJ was an abusive man to this girl. And listen, man, people can say a lot of things about me, but I've always been honest, and I have had a troubled history with my relationships with women in the past. I have not been the best guy. I know I seem like a nice, handsome, melanated man here, but I've had my down moments with women, and I can admit that. And all of that is public record. I've talked about the aggravated stalking charge that I caught in Florida a few years ago and stuff like that, because I got my heart broken so bad and I overreacted and stuff like that. But we live and we learn. And OJ, as a man of his time, right, it was probably very common for men back then to be more abusive to women than it is now, right? Like back in the day, like if you smacked your wife, she would call the police. The police would come and talk to the guy and say, "Hey, man, chill out." Like they would just tell him, "Chill out," and let the people stay in the house, right? They used to be common back in the day in America for domestic violence to go underreported and stuff like that, right? And that's not cool. It's not cool at all to put your hands on women, be abusive to women and stuff like that. And OJ should have known, as a black man, that he could not get away with that. But I think OJ was so far gone, his head was so far up his rear end, that he really thought that, he wasn't black anymore. He was OJ. So he could act like a white man. The white men, they slap around their women and stuff like that, or at least they used to in the past, or maybe, well, of course, that still happens now, right? The number one killer of white women is white men. So, yeah, either way, this is not okay. What OJ did was not okay. But does that mean he was a murderer? No, 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 because OJ went to court and was proven by a jury of his peers to not be guilty of the murder of his ex-wife, period. Jump into the comments right here. Greg Mack says, the law fathers of all lawyers, Johnny Cochran, they need to make a statue of the honorable man. Michael Vick is a quarterback. OJ is a running back. See, I told you my my sports takes are horrible. Mike Vick is a quarterback, but no, Mike Vick also played like a running back. He was like a quarterback / running back because he was so fast and agile with his feet. I told you my sports takes cannot be taken seriously, guys. All I talk about here is politics, fighting white supremacy, black empowerment, that sort of stuff. You cannot take my sports takes seriously. I know for a fact somebody turned off this video as soon as I said Mike Vick was my favorite quarterback. All the real niggas have permanently got me on band. I know that. But I don't watch sports, and I haven't watched sports since Kaepernick. At least I haven't watched the NFL since Kaepernick. You get what I'm saying? And I never liked the idea of how in sports, rich white men trade black men for other teams and stuff like that. I don't like that, man. It never sat right with me how the American, sports system is set up. But hey, that's me. I'm weird. I'm different. That's why you're either watching or not watching. Continuing here. So Mr. Simpson in 1987 with his wife, Nicole, whom he married 2 years earlier. They divorced in 1992. So calls to the police. The abuse left Nicole Simpson bruised and terrified on scores of occasions, but the police rarely took substantive action. After one call to the police on New Year's Day, 1989, officers found her badly beaten and half naked, hiding in the bushes outside their home. He's going to kill me, she sobbed. Mr. Simpson was arrested and convicted of spousal abuse, but was let off with a fine and probation. The couple divorced in 1992, but confrontations continued. On October 25th, 1993, Miss Simpson called the police again. He's back, she told a 911 operator, and officers once more intervened. Then it happened. On June 12th, 1994, Miss Simpson, 35, and Mr. Goldman, 25, were attacked outside her condominium in the Brentwood section of Los Angeles, not far from Mr. Simpson's estate. She was nearly decapitated, and Mr. Goldman was slashed to death. Okay, so the knife was never found, but the police discovered a bloody glove at the scene and abundant hair, blood, and fiber clues. Aware of Mr. Simpson's earlier abuse and her calls for help, investigators believed from the start that Mr. Simpson, 46, was the killer. They found blood on his car and in his home, a bloody glove that matched the one picked up near the bodies. There was never any other suspect. 5 days later, after Mr. Simpson had attended Nicole's funeral with their two children, he was charged with the murders, but fled in his white Ford Bronco, with his old friend and teammate Al Cowlings at the wheel and the fugitive in the back holding a gun to his head and threatening suicide. The Bronco led a fleet of patrol cars and news helicopters on a slow 60-mile televised chase over the Southern California freeways. All right. So, after he was charged with murdering his former wife and her friend, Mr. Simpson fled in his white Ford Bronco, leading a fleet of patrol cars in a televised chase over the Southern California freeway. So, yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the most iconic things in American history. Like, everybody knows the Ford Bronco, in the slow chase. And, I heard somebody from LA once say, like, it's the most amazing thing about the OJ case is that the highway was open. There was no traffic, right? Like, they literally shut down traffic so OJ could have a slow police chase. Very interesting. And I think that was one of the first, televised police chases on American TV. So, networks preempted primetime programming for the spectacle, some of it captured by news cameras and helicopters, and a nationwide audience of 95 million people watched for hours. Overpasses and roadsides were crowded with spectators. The police closed highways and motorists pulled over to watch, some waving and cheering at the passing Bronco, which was not stopped. Mr. Simpson finally returned home and was taken into custody. The ensuing trial lasted 9 months, from January to early October 1995, and captivated the nation with its lurid accounts of the murders and the tactics and strategy of prosecutors and of a defense that included the dream team of Johnny L. Cochran Jr., F. Lee Bailey, Alan M. Dershowitz, Barry Scheck, and Robert L. Shapiro. It's so crazy that Alan Dershowitz is now like this right wing, uh, you know, Trump supporting, maniac outside giving commentary on everything under the sun. Also, an extreme Zionist as well. But he will still, to this day, defend O.J. Simpson. I love it. I love how Alan Dershowitz. See, y'all are gonna get mad at me because I confused Mike Vick for a quarterback, but y'all ain't gonna bill with me about Alan Dershowitz being a conservative nut who still defends OJ. Right? He is the one white man still legally bound to defend OJ to this day. I don't know if Barry Scheck is still around, but yeah, it's pretty funny. Continuing here. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher A. Darden, had what seemed to be overwhelming evidence, tests showing that blood, shoe prints, hair strands, shirt fibers, carpet threads, and other items found at the murder scene had come from Mr. Simpson or his home, and DNA tests showing that the bloody glove found at Mr. Simpson's home matched the one at the crime scene. Prosecutors also had a list of 62 incidents of abusive behavior by Mr. Simpson against his wife. But as the trial unfolded before Judge Lance Ito and a 12-member jury that included 10 black people, a jury of his peers, a jury of his peers, a jury of his peers. 10 black people, 10 black people. I love it. I love it. See, this is why the white supremacists are mad, because the same things they do to us is what happened to them in the OJ case, right? They have some black man on trial for a murder where there was no murder weapon found. And then, they put him in front of the jury of 12 white folks. And then that black man gets sentenced to death in Texas or something like that. I'm pretty sure I described at least 500 cases, even though that was very vague. And then, and then we get upset about that as black people because we know that's unfair, right? And then we know that the jury has some bias. But let's keep it a buck. How does the shoe on the other foot feel? How does it feel? How does the shoe on the other foot feel? I'm sure it feels horrible. It doesn't fit. But like the glove, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Let's go. Let's go. It became apparent that the police inquiry had been flawed. Photo evidence had been lost or mislabeled. DNA had been collected and stored improperly, raising a possibility that it was tainted. And Detective Mark Furman, a key witness, admitted that he had entered the Simpson home and found the matching glove and other crucial evidence, all without a search warrant. I believe also Mark Furman was a Nazi or a ardent racist, and at his home they found all sorts of Nazi memorabilia, and he also admitted on the stand to using the N-word quite frequently. So, if the glove don't fit, all right, the defense argued but never proved that Mr. Furman planted the second glove. More damaging, however, was its attack on his history of racist remarks. Mr. Furman swore that he had not used racist language for a decade, but four witnesses in a taped radio interview played for the jury contradicted him and undermined his credibility. After the trial, Mr. Furman pleaded no contest to a perjury charge. He was the only person convicted in the case. I love it. 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 See, I'm getting happy right now. Now I understand why black folks were so happy back then. I love it. I love seeing the white supremacists just get one. Just get one. All right. In what was seen as the crucial blunder of the trial, the prosecution asked Mr. Simpson, who was not called to testify, to try on the gloves. He struggled to do so. They were apparently too small. Iconic image. I need a t-shirt with this, man. I need a t-shirt with this. Straight legendary-ish. Mr. Simpson, during his trial in 1995, when he was asked to try on a pair of gloves, one of which was found at the scene of his former wife's murder. Absolutely beautiful. I love seeing this. All right. All right, good here. Let's continue in the story. All right. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit, Mr. Cochran told the jury later. In the end, it was the defense that had the overwhelming case with many grounds for reasonable doubt, the standard for acquittal, but it wanted more. If portrayed it portrayed the Los Angeles police as racist, charged that a black man was being railroaded, and urged the jury to think beyond guilt or innocence and send a message to a racist society. Oh, I love it. I love it. On the day of the verdict, autograph hounds, t shirt vendors, street preachers, and paparazzi engulfed the courthouse steps after what some news media outlets had called the trial of the century, producing 126 witnesses, 1,105 items of evidence, and 45,000 pages of transcripts. The jury, sequestered for 266 days, longer than any in California history, deliberated for only 3 hours. Yep, they came back and said, that man's innocent, which he was. All right. TCVRD, I came here from your video about Albania. Two or three Albanians doesn't mean are racist. So, TCVRD, I'm just going to jump aside right here. You said that I said all of Albania is racist. I did not say that all of Albania is racist. You, sir, obviously do not know English. What I said was Albania was the most racist country that I have ever visited. If you watch my videos, TCVRD, I was called the N word multiple times in multiple different cities, in Tirana, in Durres, in Barat, and in Vellore. Multiple times, sometimes multiple times in that day. They are captured on camera. They are recorded. They are in the videos that possibly brought you to my channel. So you can hear it for yourself, TCVRD. A black man being called racial slurs that nobody should be called. Even white people should not be called racial slurs unjustly. Nobody should be disrespected while being a tourist in a foreign land, period. Albania, still to this day, is the most racist country I've ever visited. And the Albanians that come on my channel and continue to racially insult me and hurl insults at my ideas and my experiences only further the point that Albania has a ton of anti-black racists within it. So TCVRD, I hope that answers your question. And thank you for subscribing. And thank you to everybody who is watching. And thank you to everybody else who wants to leave comments, because I will be replying to all comments in the chat. Continuing here. So much of America came to a standstill in homes, offices, airports, and malls. People paused to watch. Even President Bill Clinton left the Oval Office to join his secretaries. In court, cries of yes and oh no were echoed across the nation as the verdict left. Many black people jubilant and many white people aghast. How could they do such a thing? It's the criminal justice system. And in the criminal justice system, people are found innocent and guilty, and OJ was found on the side of innocence. So in the aftermath, Mr. Simpson and the case became the grist for television specials, films, and more than 30 books, many by participants who made millions. Mr. Simpson, with Lawrence Schiller, produced I Want to Tell You, a thin mosaic volume of letters, photographs, and self-justifying commentary that sold hundreds of thousands of copies and earned Mr. Simpson more than $1 million. It's so crazy how American capitalism sort of turns everything into a profit making machine or a profit making motive. So it's insane that, so many people that were involved in the trial got even richer just by being there, right? Off of the murder of a woman. It's still a tragedy. I am not discounting the fact that Nicole's death is not a tragedy or that her killer is not out there, but it's a shame that instead of trying to find the real killer, people continue to hound this black man and assume he was the killer. All right, even though he was found innocent in court. In our justice system that has no flaws. He was released after 474 days in custody, but his ordeal was hardly over. Much of the case was resurrected for the civil suit by the Goldman and Brown families. A predominantly white jury with a looser standard of proof held Mr. Simpson culpable and awarded the families $33.5 million dollars in damages. The civil case, which excluded racial issues as inflammatory and speculative, was a vindication of sorts for the families and a blow to Mr. Simpson, who insisted that he had no chance of ever paying the damages. So here's Ronald L. Goldman's father, Fred, and his sister, Kim, in 1996 during a news conference about Mr. Simpson's trial. So Mr. Simpson has spent large sums for his criminal defense. Records submitted in the murder trial showed his net worth at about $11 million, dollars, and people with knowledge of the case said he had only $3.5 million dollars afterward. A 1999 auction of his Heisman Trophy and other memorabilia netted about $500,000, which went to the plaintiffs, but court records show he paid little of the balance that was owed. He regained custody of the children he had with Miss Simpson, and in 2000, he moved to Florida, bought a home south of Miami, and settled into a quiet life, playing golf and living on pensions from the NFL, the Screen Actors Guild, and other sources, about $400,000 a year. Okay, OJ was kind of balling out. I hope they didn't garnish his wages, though. Florida laws protect a home and pension income from seizure to satisfy court judgments. I see. That's why all the crazies and criminals move to Florida. Now it makes sense. Gangsters don't die, they move to Miami and protect their pensions. Gangsters don't have pensions. And Mike Vick is not a running back. All right. The glamour and lucrative contracts were gone, but Mr. Simpson sent his two children to prep school and college. He was seen in restaurants and malls where he readily obliged requests for autographs. He was fined once for powerboat speeding in a manatee zone and once for pirating cable television signals. Okay. Okay, what a character. What a true character. In 2006, as the debt of the murder victims' families grew with interest to $38 million, dollars, he was sued by Fred Goldman, the father of Ronald Goldman, who contended that his book and television deal for If I Did It had advanced him $1 million dollars, and that it had been structured to cheat the family of the damages owed. The projects were scrapped by News Corporation, parent of the publisher HarperCollins and the Fox Television Network, and a corporation spokesman said Mr. Simpson was not expected to repay an $800,000 advance. So he got to keep the money. That was a finesse. Okay, so Simpson was not only a great running back, he was a master finesser as well. The Goldman family secured the book rights from a trustee after a bankruptcy court proceeding and had it published in 2007 under the title If I Did It, Confessions of a Killer. On the book's cover, the if apparently in tiny type and the I did it in large red letters. Very interesting quote here. So Craig Mack says, it was a beautiful day after the verdict. That was like the first courtroom TV everyone was talking about before the verdict. Everything was quiet. Watch the documentary. I watched the documentary, man, and the documentary is amazing. And I support everybody watching the OJ documentary and the dramatized version as well. I said that at the beginning of the chat. So another trial in prison. So, after years in which it seemed he had been convicted in the court of public opinion, Mr. Simpson in 2008 again faced a jury. This time, he was accused of raiding a Las Vegas hotel room in 2007 with 5 other men, most of them convicted criminals and 2 armed with guns to steal a trove of sports memorabilia from a pair of collectible dealers. All right. So, Mr. Simpson, on the opening day of his trial in 2008 in Las Vegas, he was found guilty of invading a hotel room and stealing a trove of sports memorabilia. I have to say this, right? I don't exactly remember when it happened, but I remember when Jerry Lewis died. Jerry Lewis was like a famous guy. Who was a rock star, back in like the 60s or 50s or something like that. And his obituary was not that long, like OJ's, of course, because OJ is like a national icon and we'll always remember him and stuff like that. But in the Jerry Lewis obituary, Jerry Lewis was a man who, married a like 13-year-old girl, right? Back in like 1960, when that was like, no longer acceptable, right? And they just made like a brief reference to that. Why is it that in the OJ article they're going so much in depth into his criminal history? I know it's a big, story. His life, after football was mostly wrapped up in legal drama. But I'm just saying, like, it seems like my opinion is that the white media, is constantly on the attack against OJ because of him getting away with murder, right? So they say. I don't think he got away with murder. He was put through the ringer and found innocent. Once again, free like OJ all day. But it's just a shame that that happens. But this doesn't happen to other figures, white figures predominantly, who do horrible things, and then when they pass on, that's sort of airbrushed over. But OJ gets this long article making this black man out to be the worst criminal of all time when he did not kill anybody. And all he did was the only thing he was ever found guilty of was smacking his wife, of course, which is absolutely horrible, and trying to steal back his own memorabilia that some collectors got. Continuing here. So, Mr. Simpson claimed that he was only trying to retrieve items stolen from him, including 8 footballs, 2 plaques, and a photo of him with the FBI director J. Edgar Hoover, and that he had not known about any guns. But 4 men who had been arrested with him and pleaded guilty testified against him, 2 saying that they had carried guns at his request. Prosecutors also played hours of tapes secretly recorded by a co conspirator detailing the plan and execution of the crime. On October 3rd, 13 years to the day after his acquittal in Los Angeles, a jury of 9 women and 3 men found him guilty of armed robbery, kidnapping, assault, conspiracy, coercion, and other charges. After Mr. Simpson was sentenced to a minimum of 9 years in prison, his lawyer vowed to appeal, noting that none of the jurors were black and questioning whether they could be fair to Mr. Simpson after what had happened years earlier. But jurors said the double murder case was never mentioned in deliberations. Okay, yeah, OJ did not get a fair trial then. Let's keep it real. We live in racialized America, post apartheid America, where race does make a big deal and how people view others and how people view situations. So I do not think it is right under any circumstances for a black man, or I'll even extend this to a white man, a Hispanic man, Asian man, anybody, to be to have a trial with people that are not of their same racial background on the jury, period. Now, I know it's hard because people that are selected for juries are usually voters in most states, cities, counties, however they decide. Most of the people that are selected are voters. And unfortunately, a lot of our people are not registered voters, even though we should be, and we should be voting and stuff like that. But we have to get involved in the jury pool system because too many black men get railroaded into the criminal justice system because the jury was absolutely not fair, because it was biased, because it was racist against them. Continuing here, in 2013, the Nevada Parole Board, citing his positive conduct in prison and participation in inmate programs, granted Mr. Simpson parole on several charges relating to his robbery conviction, but the board left other verdicts in place. His bid for a new trial was rejected by a Nevada judge, and legal experts said that appeals were unlikely to succeed. He remained in custody until October 1st, 2017, when the parole board unanimously granted him parole when he became eligible. Certain conditions of Mr. Simpson's parole, travel restrictions, no contacts with co-defendants in the robbery case, and no drinking to excess remained until 2021 when they were lifted, making him a completely free man. Questions about his guilt or innocence in the murder of his former wife and Mr. Goldman never went away. In May 2008, Mike Gilbert, a memorabilia dealer and former crony, said in a book that Mr. Simpson, high on marijuana, had admitted the killings to him after the trial. Mr. Gilbert quoted Mr. Simpson as saying that he had carried no knife, but that he had used one that Miss Simpson had in her hand when she opened the door. He also said that Mr. Simpson had stopped taking arthritis medicine to let his hands swell so they would not fit the gloves in court. Mr. Simpson's lawyer, Yale L. Gallanter, denied Mr. Gilbert's claim, calling him delusional, as he was, because OJ was found guilty. They had all the evidence right there back in 1995. They found him innocent. All right. Yeah, this is the show right here. The People versus OJ. Everybody should watch this. Great show. Absolutely great show. Shout out to Cuba Gooding Jr., but I don't support his Diddy behavior, if you know what I'm talking about. So, in 2016, more than 20 years after his murder trial, the story of OJ was told twice more for endlessly fascinated mass audiences on television. The People versus OJ Simpson, Ryan Murphy's installment in the American Crime Story anthology on FX, focused on the trial itself and the constellation of characters brought together by the defendant, played by Cuba Gooding Jr. OJ Made in America, a five-part, nearly 8-hour installment in ESPN's 30 for 30 documentary series. It was also released in theaters, detailed the trial but extended the narrative to include a biography of Mr. Simpson and an examination of race, fame, sports in Los Angeles over the previous half century. How the hell did they release OJ Made in America in theaters? Did they edit it down? Was there like an abridged version? How do you put 8 hours in cinema? Who's going to sit there for that? A.O. Scott, in a commentary in the New York Times, called The People versus OJ a tightly packed, almost indecently entertaining piece of pop realism, a Dreiser novel infused with the spirit of Tom Wolfe, and said OJ Made in America had the grandeur and authority of the best long form fiction. Absolute fantastic show here. I think also OJ got privilege because of his good looks as well. I think that's something to consider. Also, being a man, but I'm going to talk about that more in the live stream with my wife. So, Mr. Simpson in 1967, he was the number one draft pick in 1969 when he went to the Buffalo Bills in leg braces as a child. Orenthal James Simpson was born in San Francisco on July 9th, 1947, one of four children of James and Eunice Durden Simpson. As an infant afflicted with the calcium deficiency rickets, he wore leg braces for several years but outgrew his disability. His father, a janitor and cook, left the family when the child was 4, and his mother, a hospital nurse's aide, raised the children in a housing project in the tough Potrero Hill district. All right. As a teenager, Mr. Simpson, who hated the name Orenthal and called himself OJ, ran with street gangs. But at 15, he was introduced by a friend to Willie Mays, the renowned San Francisco Giants outfielder. The encounter was inspirational and turned his life around. Mr. Simpson recalled. He joined the Galileo High School football team and won all city honors in his senior year. In 1967, Mr. Simpson married his high school sweetheart, Marguerite Whitley. The couple had three children, Arnell, Jason, and Aaron. Shortly after their divorce in 1979, Aaron, 23 months old, fell into a swimming pool at home and died a week later. Tragedy. Mr. Simpson married Nicole Brown in 1985. The couple had a daughter, Sydney, and a son, Justin. He is survived by Arnell, Jason, Sydney, and Justin Simpson, and three grandchildren. His lawyer, Malcolm P. Laverne, said. After being released from prison in Nevada in 2017, Mr. Simpson moved into the Las Vegas Country Club home of a wealthy friend, James Barnett, for what he assumed would be a temporary stay. But he found himself enjoying the local golf scene and making friends, sometimes with people who introduced themselves to him at restaurants, Mr. Laverne said. Mr. Simpson decided to remain in Las Vegas full time, and his death, he lived right on the course of the Rhodes Ranch Golf Club. Recently Donald Trump went to like a Chick-fil-A in like Atlanta, and a lot of black people were there working at the Chick-fil-A because it's Atlanta. It was all black, right? And some of the black people said, "We love you, Trump. We want to take pictures with you, Trump. Trump, can I intern with you if you get back in office and stuff like that?" And when I think about OJ going to these golf courses at these, very exclusive white enclave type neighborhoods and stuff like that, I imagine OJ was around white folks who probably back in 1993, 94, whatever, said, he killed his wife. And they said all sorts of racial slurs behind closed doors about OJ. And then when they see OJ at the country club, they're like, oh, OJ, can I get your autograph? OJ, we love you, man. OJ, can I take a picture? This is the thing, man. All the people who talk ish about people online, when they see celebrities, when they see somebody that they haven't seen before in real life, they turn into ultimate super fans. I'm pretty sure if I went back to Albania, if I went back to any country where I've done a Black Sit review that was negative and people recognize me from the video, I'm pretty sure somebody would come up to me and say, "Hey, Simon." Or they start yelling across the street positive things, but nobody, generally, people are pretty tame and people want to stay away from conflict. And also people want to stay away from, people that look like me because I got these hands and, I'm a pretty aggressive looking young man when I want to be or when I want to present as such. I think the same thing applied to OJ here. The same thing applied to OJ. OJ was living in this white world, and a lot of the time the people, wanted to just take a picture with the celebrity. I'm pretty sure, the people that came up to him in restaurants, these potbelly middle-aged white guys were just happy to see a celebrity, because Americans love celebrities. We love celebrity culture. Continuing here. So, from his youth, Mr. Simpson was a natural on the gridiron. He had dazzling speed, power, and finesse in a broken field that made him hard to catch, let alone tackle. He began his collegiate career at San Francisco City College, scoring 54 touchdowns in 2 years. In his third year, he transferred to Southern Cal, where he shattered records, rushing for 3,423 yards and 36 touchdowns in 22 games, and led the Trojans into the Rose Bowl in successive years. He won the Heisman Trophy as the nation's best college football player of 1968. Some may have really been into college ball, though college ball can sometimes be more exciting, especially if you're at the stadium, right? But watching sports, not for me. So, Greg Mack says Albania showed their true colors. Yes, they did. And their colors are anti-black racist over that red flag. Continuing here. His professional career was even more illustrious, though it took time to get going. The number one draft pick in 1969, Mr. Simpson went to the Buffalo Bills. The league's worst team had the first pick and was used sparingly in his rookie season. In his second, he was sidelined with a knee injury. But by 1971, behind a line known as the Electric Company, because they turned on the juice, he began breaking games open. Here's OJ in his prime playing for the Buffalo Bills, making history. I wonder if Benny the Butcher has any OJ bars. If you know them, let me know in the chat. Mr. Simpson in 1973 during a football game between the Buffalo Bills and the Baltimore Colts. Oh, the Baltimore used to have a team called the Colts. I don't know sports, guys. Mike Vick is a running back. Tim Tebow was a offensive lineman. I don't know sports at all. I'm gonna just start saying wild sports stuff. Uh, Colin Kaepernick was a tight end. I'm just gonna start saying wild sports stuff because I don't know sports. I don't know. But yeah, when did Baltimore switch to the Ravens? Because I know the Baltimores have the Ravens. I at least know that at least. Oh man. Continuing here. In 1973, Mr. Simpson became the first to rush for over 2,000 yards, breaking a record held by Jim Brown, and was named the NFL's most valuable player. In 1975, he led the American Football Conference in rushing and scoring. After 9 seasons, he was traded to the San Francisco 49ers, his home team, and played his first 2 years with them. He retired in 1979 as the highest paid player in the league with a salary over $800,000, having scored 61 touchdowns and rushed for more than 11,000 yards in his career. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. Mr. Simpson's work as a network sports analyst overlaps with his football years. He was a color commentator for ABC from 1969 to 1977 and for NBC from 1978 to 1982. He rejoined ABC on Monday Night Football from 1983 to 1986. Nelson Moreno jumped into the comments. He said, I'm not black, I'm OJ. Okay. Yes, shout out to OJ. But OJ is innocent and now he is free. He is finally free. I wonder if OJ is in heaven and he's trying to like meet up with Nicole. And it's like, baby, I'm sorry. You know, I would have been there to protect you. You think OJ is up in heaven talking to Nicole like, baby, what happened? Tell me who did it. You think they're up in heaven having that conversation? I wonder. Actor in Pitchman, and yeah, and he had a parallel acting career. He appeared in some 30 films as well as television productions, including the miniseries Roots, 1977, and the movies The Towering Inferno, 1975. He was in Roots. That's right. OJ was in Roots. I do remember him. I forgot what character he played, but he was in the original Roots. That's right. That's right. Absolutely. Continuing. So he was also in the movie Killer Force, 1976, Cassandra Crossing, 1976, Capricorn 1, 77, Firepower, 79, and others, including the comedy The Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad, 88, and its 2 sequels. He did not pretend to be a serious actor. I'm a realist, he said. No matter how many acting lessons I took, the public just wouldn't buy me as Othello. Interesting, interesting. All right. So Mr. Simpson in a scene from the movie The Cassandra Crossing. He appeared in some 30 films as well as television productions. So Mr. Simpson was a congenial celebrity. He talked freely to reporters and fans, signed autographs, posed for pictures with children, and was self-effacing in interviews, crediting his teammates and coaches who clearly liked him. In an era of Black Power displays, his only militancy was to crack heads on the gridiron. And this is where I think a lot of Black people started later on, hating on OJ, and even back then, probably hating on OJ too, is that, during that time, it was all Black Fist, Black Power, Black Panthers, Black empowerment, that sort of stuff. And OJ was like a Kanye type figure. I even think Simpson was a Republican, low key. He probably voted for Trump or George Bush or something like that. But yeah, he was one of those Black men who was like, I can supersede race. I can overcome the hindrance of me being a Black man by being the exceptional Negro. I can be that one Black guy at the country club that everybody loves, everybody likes. I smile really hard, cheese really hard. I'm very handsome. I'm great at sports, and white men love nothing more than a Black man who can carry a ball faster than another one. So he probably played into all of that and then started to believe all the hype when he was at college, right? When he was in college playing the sports and all the coaches patting him on the back, smacking him on the ass, saying, great game, OJ, and that sort of stuff. He probably started to believe he was actually that guy, that man, that one Black man who overcame his race. Like Nelson Moreno said, I'm not Black, I'm OJ. Jump into the comments. Baltimore Colts moved to Indianapolis in 1985. OJ was the character Katie Torre. Okay. All right. Craig Mack knows his movies. Craig Mack knows his movies. Craig Mack, you got to send some movie requests for me and Acty to review. All right, going on, continuing. His smiling, racially neutral image, easygoing manner, and almost universal acceptance made him a perfect candidate for endorsements. Even before joining the NFL, he signed deals, including a 3-year, $255,000 contract with Chevrolet. He later endorsed sporting goods, soft drinks, razor blades, and other products. In 1975, Hertz made him the first Black star of a national television advertising campaign. Memorable long running commercials depicted him sprinting through airports and leaping over counters to get to a Hertz rental car. He earned millions. Hertz rentals shot up, and the ads made OJ's face one of the most recognizable in America. Mr. Simpson, in a way, wrote his own farewell on the day of his arrest. As he rode in the Bronco with a gun to his head, a friend, Robert Kardashian, released a handwritten letter to the public that he had left at home, expressing love for Mr. Simpson and denying that he killed her. Don't feel sorry for me, he wrote. I've had a great life, great friends. Please think of the real OJ and not this lost person. Absolutely a great eulogy written here by the New York Times. Shout out to the man who wrote it. Let's scroll up and see who put this together. This was written by Robert D. McFadden. He's probably been preparing this for years, because that's what I think good eulogists do. They're constantly writing about people, updating their life events. They probably have like a whole folder of people who are up there in age, just waiting to pass away and stuff like that. Probably the only hard part about their job is when a young person dies tragically, and then they have to sort of scramble it all together. But yeah, great article right here. Once again, OJ is an innocent man. He was not a murderer. He is only a woman beater and a bad petty thief. Greg Mack says OJ was one of the first to do commercials for Hertz rental car company. Yeah, he was a major Black star. At a time when it was uncommon to see Black faces in high places in televised spaces, right? So let's go here. I'm going to be reading an article here from my guy Charles M. Blow. Now, Charles M. Blow is one of the top editorialists at the New York Times. He's also from Louisiana. Wah, wah. He's from Louisiana, so you know he trill. You know he trill. Charles Blow also did a very interesting documentary last year, South to Black Power. I watched it. I really want to watch it again, maybe give my take on it and review it and stuff like that. But yeah, Charles Blow is going to write this about OJ. I'm going to read his editorial. I did not read it beforehand and check it out. Before I do that, let me jump into the comments. Nelson Moreno said Simon is high and low on the list. Spike Lee is going to remake it with Ice. No. No, 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 no. Spike Lee is making a movie with Ice Spice. Stop it. Stop the madness. Nelson, I don't believe you. You're going to have to drop the link. I don't believe you. You're trolling. You're trolling right now. Spike Lee is not making a movie with Ice Spice. Please, no. Anyway, Greg Mack says one of my favorite films came out in 1979. Must watch film and Deer Hunter. Okay. Okay, okay. Yeah, so Deer Hunter might be on the list. I've heard great things about that film. Anyway, jump into the article here from Charles Blow, Understanding the Racial Divide Over O.J. Simpson's Acquittal. So Nelson Moreno says, I'm going to drop the link, but is the movie on the list? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch. We need to do more Spike Lee films. So shout out to the Gaspar Noé films. The Gaspar Noé films are great, but I really want to do Spike Lee's entire filmography. You know what I mean? Because Spike Lee has done some amazing films, and it's a shame he does not get the recognition he deserves as probably the best American filmmaker. Period. Jumping here. So, Sylvia Woods, owner of a popular restaurant in Harlem, celebrating the acquittal of O.J. Simpson in 1995. Girl, she is happy. She is happy. So, and this is the thing. I love OJ just for the fact he made black people this happy. When black people perpetually live in a constant state of hell in America and in the world by and large, when black people live in a world like this, I am just happy whenever we see black joy. And OJ brought so much black joy to this day. Like he's bringing joy to me now just for the fact he was acquitted of a crime that he did not commit. So yeah, shout out to OJ once again. Once again, I love OJ. All right, in 1995, when OJ Simpson was found not guilty of murdering his former wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman, the New York Times ran dueling photos on his front page. One showed white people aghast, a man with his mouth agape, a woman with one hand on her head and the other hugging her own body. The other photo showed three black people embracing the celebration, and one of them, Sylvia Woods, an owner of a popular restaurant in Harlem, seeming to yell with her arms stretched wide and fist clenched. These images captured the way the trial and its verdict sharply divided the country by race. Many white people saw it as a straightforward case in which the victims, suspect, and evidence were clearly defined. For them, the celebration of the verdict by black people was perverse, an extreme case of racial tribalism and a disregard for basic humanity. Many black people, however, saw it quite differently. O.J. Simpson, who died on Thursday at 76, was no paragon of blackness. In fact, he wanted to transcend racial categories. He told the Times in 1994 that his biggest accomplishment was being seen as a man first, not a black man. Yeah, and that's raccoon talk. If you're talking like that, we should be seen as great black men, and we should use our blackness to say that we can survive anything and transcend anything and overcome anything. But our blackness should not be disregarded. Of course, we are men first. Of course, we are human beings first. But our blackness, by the way the world treats us, has to come first in our minds and how we move and operate in this society and in this world. Nelson Moreno says domestic abusers are one of the biggest causes of suffering in the black community. I have sympathy, but not much. Well, OJ never hit a black woman, as far as we know. That might be controversial. That might get me canceled. But as far as we know, OJ never smacked a black woman. Okay. Continuing here. And once again, OJ was innocent. He is not a detriment to the black community because he is not a murderer. He is only speaking raccoon talk. And maybe if he voted Republican, that's an even bigger issue. But continuing here, it's not that most black people thought him innocent or another Rosa Parks. For them, it was the system itself that was on trial. The question wasn't whether the justice system would work equally in the service of justice, but whether its inherent and inveterate injustices would also be applied equally. Ah, I love that. I love Charles Blow because that's a great way of putting it. I said that at the beginning of my live stream, but just in less eloquent terms. But yeah, we just want to see the broken criminal justice system break some white folks' hearts too. You get what I'm saying? It's like, it's like if you're a fan of the New Orleans Saints, you see your team always lose, you at least want to see them win one game. You get what I'm saying? So Craig Mack says Warriors, Deer Hunter, you and acting must watch True Love with Christian Slater. Absolutely. Shout out to Craig Mack for those recommendations. Those are all very good. All very old movies. Craig Mack showing his age outside, but hey, it's all good. We review old movies, new movies, anytime, whatever's great. Continuing here, the Simpson trial came in the shadow of the trial of the police officers who savagely beat Rodney King and were still found not guilty. Los Angeles exploded in riots. Scores of people were killed. Buildings were reduced to ashes. It was one of the costliest riots in terms of property damage in American history. People had exhaled their frustration in a language of death and destruction, but the violence was ultimately injurious to their own communities, and it brought no gesture or symbol of rectitude from the justice system itself. The Simpson trial, in a strange way, held promise of closure in the ancient eye for an eye sense. Could a black man with evidence stacked against him be acquitted in the same way that those white men with evidence stacked against them were? The answer was yes. Yes. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. I didn't see the link, Nelson Moreno. Yeah, I didn't see you drop it. I don't know if you dropped it in the comments or in the live stream chat. But whatever you do, just try to drop it if you can. But hey, I'm probably going to hear about it later. I just don't think the reason why I reacted that way is that most likely I think Ice Spice cannot act, right? That's why I'm hesitant to say I want to watch it, and I'm in disbelief. But when I think about it, Ice Spice and Spike Lee sort of align. Both are from New York. Both are very, abrasive in your face. Both are very somewhat controversial and stuff like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Spike Lee actually did a film with Ice Spice. Now I'm letting it sink in. Now that it's sinking in, it makes sense to some degree, but it depends on what story they're going to tell. And if they're remaking a film, High and Low, I did not see that film before, so I don't know. Continuing here. The answer was yes. Paradoxically and quite frankly, depressingly, the verdict proved that injustice was an equal opportunity offender, at least in this rarest of cases. Shout out to Charles Blow for this great article. Yeah, the reason, it should be a moment of reflection in the justice system. Uh, the reason why people should reflect on the justice system and how unfairly it works uh, uh, is why this OJ case matters. That's the point I'm trying to get at. Like, people should look at this and say, okay, we obviously have a broken system, right? If you believe, true wholeheartedly, you believe that the evidence against OJ proved that he was guilty as a murderer, but this man was still able to walk away, what can we fix in the justice system to make this actually better? Because up until this point, black people had been screaming the entire time that this justice system was unjust at its core, and that reform had to be made in the laws, in the way the prosecution was done, in the way the jury was selected. Everything needs to be fixed, right? But having the OJ case with 10 jurors on the trial, with bias of people exposed, when Furman was exposed for being a Nazi and using racial slurs and stuff like that, when all of that is exposed, what can we do to actually make this a better system for everybody? Because the white folks took this on the chin and they said, "Ah, that hurts." You get what I'm saying? But black folks celebrated, but we were celebrating not just because now we have a murderer walking amongst us. It's because, like always, black people are always thinking, when will these white folks learn? When will the dominant society learn that the system that they have created, that they believe is fair, balanced, and equal, is not? And it needs to change, because then it will hurt everybody. That's why black folks are celebrating. So when I look at this woman's face, I'm not seeing somebody happy that there is now a wife murderer walking amongst her, which OJ was not. OJ was not a wife murderer. OJ never hurt a fly, except when he smacked his wife, which is absolutely horrible. But we are happy about the fact that maybe a lesson was learned by the dominant society. And of course not. Of course not, because we still had injustice since then. There have been plenty of men who have killed their wives or abused their wives and gotten away with it since OJ. There have been plenty of people who have murdered innocent Americans, like George Zimmerman murdered Trayvon Martin, and that police officer that murdered Tamir Rice, and the one that killed Sean Bell, et cetera, et cetera. There have been many instances of injustice still in the justice system. So the disappointment in this is that the dominant society still has not learned. The white supremacists have not learned. The justice system has not reformed to actually make it equitable, so people that are somewhat undeniably guilty get held responsible for their crimes. That's the point I'm trying to get at here. I hope that makes absolute sense. All right, so Nelson Moreno said Black Americans should learn from the French Revolution and pay visit to the figures and institutions of power. I mean, a real visit. Absolutely. Nelson, I wanted to do a live stream talking about one of the Black Panthers who died recently, who was a very prominent member of the Black Panthers, and he was a part of the Panther 21, which was a group of Black people associated with the Panthers who were accused of, in court, of trying to blow up a New York City building. But the mother of a very famous rapper, the mother's name is Afeni Shakur, so you know who her son is. She defended them in court without a law degree and got them off. And one of the members of the Panther 21 recently died, and I wanted to pay homage and respects to him. But the thing is, people only care about celebrity in this country. All the live streams I do, doing educational content, covering very deep and important topics, they don't get a lot of views or clicks or likes because people mostly want to hear what's happening with OJ, what's up with Kanye West, what's the new thing happening with so and so, right? So people are more concerned with that. Because if I did the live stream about the Black Panther, nobody would click it because nobody cares. Nobody cares, unfortunately, as we see. But I still care. And once again, I don't do my live streams for views, clicks, or likes because literally I right now have one person in the live stream listening. So it doesn't matter to me, right? But I will do the live stream about the Black Panther. But I wanted to do the OJ first because people are more interested in that. Uh, Nelson Moreno said, now it's Drake versus Kendrick, ASAP Rocky, Future, The Weekend, Metro. See, exactly, right? Like Nelson Moreno, people are, more focused on celebrity stuff. What's happening with Drake and Kendrick and J. Cole's apology and stuff like that. So I remember that Tupac's mom shot some cops that pulled her over, LOL. I don't know about that story, but I do know Tupac shot some cops. But I don't think Afeni ever shot any police officers. But Afeni was a suspected terrorist, and she was found not guilty. She was acquitted of any wrongdoing, of any plot to blow up a New York City building, and that happened back in the 70s. And she actually gave birth to Tupac. She actually gave birth to Tupac while she was held in custody, held in jail, awaiting trial for the Panther 21 case. Craig Mack says people want to hear the BS. Absolutely. People want the BS. They don't want education. People don't like to read. People don't like to learn. People don't want to see a different perspective. People don't want to open their minds. People generally just want to be silly. They just want entertainment. And I can't blame them. It's YouTube, right? You come on here to watch videos of girls twerking, fight videos, and whatever Charleston White has to say next, right? Continuing here. Here's another quote. Here's another editorial piece from another Black writer. This is written by Wesley Morris. He runs a podcast for NPR as well, and there's also a New York Times opinionist piece writer. So I'm going to be reading what he says. Once again, I'm only reading what the Black authors on New York Times have to say. I'm not going to be delving into what the dominant society has to say because we already know they're going to be attacking and shredding OJ for his legacy. So OJ was an earthquake. We're still living with his aftershocks. He tried to shed his blackness, but his all-consuming murder trial put the historically lurid American psyche on full display. So when our great Americans go, we know how to mourn them. Their lives were so grand, so architectural, infrastructural, awesome, admired, adventurous, outsized, so representative of some or many of this country's ideals that the elegies come gushing. But there's a great American subset where the adventure rocks the infrastructure and the life leaves a gash. Our seismic Americans. That was O.J. Simpson. What did he register? Almost a 9. Yeah. Wow, that's a great. I like the way it works. I like the flow of the writing. Just too many adjectives. Slightly less adjectives here. I'm a critic of writing because I write myself. And go check out the episodes I write for Culturalist Theory. So Nelson Moreno jumped into the comments. He said, I'll send you the link on Twitter now. Ice Spice is a trash actress. Very weird push. All right, continuing here. In some realm, the football career and its showbiz, afterlife, pitching rental cars, and enlivening spoofery would have warranted the plain old great American treatment. Let's even include his distaste for race. That just complicates the greatness. But look at what became of that distaste, the gash. There was something hopeful about the iconoclast in OJ, for he dared to defy the limits placed on his black self. Many great Americans sought to shed the supposed stigma of their blackness. They marched, they protested, they organized, they led. They led. OJ did as OJ was famous for doing and juked. He shed the blackness itself, disowned it. His race was incompatible with his American dreams, with his OJ ness. Why couldn't he have what white people had? Why couldn't he live as they did? Indeed, why couldn't he? Okay, so this is the problem with a lot of. I'm sorry. Here's where I get on my high horse a bit. I feel like he's framing OJ's step away from blackness, with the quotes, I'm not black, I'm OJ, and stuff like that. He's framing it as some sort of revolutionary act, as if OJ was living beyond his blackness, as some sort of fight or reaction to the anti black white supremacist society that America is. But OJ's was not that at all. It cannot be radically black to shed your blackness if then all you do is try to emulate and model white society. And then on top of that, advocate for the policies or ideas that the dominant society pushes that perpetually puts us at a disadvantage, making us feel like we're inferior because of some choice that we have or some deficiency within black people. That is the big problem here that I see with what Wellesley Morris wrote in this article. I do not think OJ's, transcendence, racial transcendency, was some sort of revolutionary way of, you know, uh, uh, destigmatizing blackness. What the civil rights protesters did, what the Black Panthers did, and so many others did, was affirm our blackness and say that our blackness is nothing to be feared. We are still black. We deserve full rights as Americans and as human beings on this planet, but we are not going to disown our blackness at all. When they held up the sign that says "I am a man," and you see that black man holding it, it's not him trying to say I am not a black man. Obviously, he is a black man holding it. But OJ saying explicitly, I am not black, I am OJ, that is explicitly different, and there's nothing revolutionary about that at all. That's like saying Kanye West quote about slavery not being a choice is revolutionary because he's trying to reframe the idea of slavery. Like, he's taking back the idea that we were oppressed and beaten down and saying that we chose this because we had some greater goal in mind. No, slavery slavery was not a choice. And yeah, I, I just really hate how some people of my generation, because I believe that Wellesley Morris is like my age, if not maybe a bit older or younger, who knows, uh, have this diluted mind. Because a lot of black millennials, in my opinion, especially if they're like highly educated black millennials, they went to private school. Let's keep it absolutely, but they went to private school with like a lot of white folks, grew up in like white suburbs, or had a lot of like influence from the dominant society. And then, some of them say things like, okay, my blackness is hindered because if I'm black, I'm supposed to be in some box. And if I'm outside that box, I'm disowning my blackness. So there's that conflict with that. But we have to reconcile that conflict because that describes me as well. I'm a black man who grew up technically like in a suburban all American lifestyle, with the dog, the picket fence, big suburban home, all that sort of stuff. Went to college, got educated and stuff like that. But I've never disowned my blackness. I could never understand that. I could never understand looking in the mirror and say, you know, um, I my blackness has nothing to do with the way that my life has turned out, or it will have no bearing on the way my life will turn out. I'm going on a rant here, but this paragraph right here really triggered me because I feel like he is framing it that way. All right. Uh, so Craig Mack says, "R.I.P. to OJ, and you have a fabulous Friday, Simon. Any plans in the H in Hungary? Hey, man, I'm just chilling, going to the gym, trying to stay strong, lose weight. You know what I'm saying? Trying not to have Craig Mack call me fat on live stream. That's what I'm trying to do. Are we still in great American territory? I think so. After all, folks knew what he meant. It can be a real burden, standing for, standing in for. Folks also know that OJ liked to run. That was him in 1977, galloping in Africa alongside LeVar Burton on night one of Roots. The man was not an intellectual, not in any conventional sense. He did exist as an idea, though, as a curious, compelling, perhaps glorious what if. What if a black man were free to live as himself and never face a consequence for merely being? What if white people truly just saw him as he wished they would, as OJ? Oh God, this is cringe. This is absolutely cringe. This is bad. This is bad. Okay, the reason why OJ is consistently hounded, and the reason why he is uh attacked by the dominant society, from everybody from late night comedians to white folks on Twitter to your grandma, right? Who happens to be white, not your black grandma, because your black grandma is looking at OJ like this. But the reason why is because they did see him as black. Nobody ever forgot that he was black. If his blackness was not a concern, why in the trial did Mark Furman's racial past of using the N word come up, right? Like, of course, white folks saw him as black. They always saw him as black. They said to OJ, "You're one of the good ones. OJ, you're more of them should be like you," and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure OJ heard that a bunch of times, right? OJ pretended like his life was normal, like any other, very wealthy white American, but his life was abnormal. Like being black in itself is abnormal. There's nothing normal about being black in the white supremacist world. So everything is inverted, distorted, and twisted in a way. Being a very rich nigga is like being the prisoner in jail who gets the most commissary. Let's keep it real. Like OJ did not supersede his blackness, and it was not revolutionary in a way. This is some of the worst take. This is the worst. This is a worse take than mine, right? Like I have pretty bad takes on pretty much everything, but this is pretty bad. This is absolutely horrendous. He appeared to be living just that dream in a place some call La La Land, no less. But it was more like a program the La Las once produced, Fantasy Island. All right, interesting. The LAs, oh, the La-Las, but it was more like a program the La-Las once produced, Fantasy Island. Okay. He found himself the nexus of a murder case in 1994, accused of stabbing to death his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend Ronald Goldman, beckoning the Richter scale. He was the defendant. Yet almost immediately, it was evident that American history was on trial. Not anything you'd find indexed in a textbook, but the American historical psyche, the nasty, lurid stuff, the paranoia, the paradox, the farce, the terror, the truth, the cosmos of it all. Dare I say the karma? There everything went, swirling, kicked up. For a television show that ran nonstop for 2 years, more roots. Interesting article. So yeah, he's bringing up that the OJ trial, basically brought out the very, very deep, dark truth about America. That it is not expected for black men to be married to white women, let alone killing them, right? To reach that level of success and fame as a black man, you're walking on tight ropes, you're walking on eggshells, and everything you do is being monitored and policed and seen from a bird's eye view. And yeah, it became Roots. Basically, OJ's American dream of living like a white man became Roots. He became enchained, enslaved, and it brought it all out to the forefront, right? So continuing here, OJ's initial impulse, flight, hours, follow. You still remember where you were for the Bronco chase, don't you? How you didn't move. I was in Philadelphia on my way to the movies and stopped for a slice of pizza in a shop that should have had the Phillies on. I had just completed my first year of college. The movie was Speed. I missed the first 10 minutes. Okay, I apologize. This man is old as hell. This is an old head talking. This is an OG. So he is not a millennial, but I'm gonna keep it a buck. I'm gonna keep it a buck. With a face like this, all right, number one, black don't crack. So if he still looks like this, I'm glad to know that our melanated brothers, can still keep that youthful glare about them and stuff like that. Craig Mack says, peace to you, Craig Mack. See you later. And yeah, but still, I'm not discounting that Gen X also had some Oreos who were conflicted about their blackness and saw somebody like OJ living beyond blackness, discounting their blackness as something that can be ascribed to as revolutionary or something that needs to be followed. Continuing here. So OJ's initial impulse, flight, hours follow. You still remember where you were for the Bronco chase, don't you? How you didn't move. I was in Philadelphia on my way to the movies and stopped for a slice of pizza in the shop that should have had the Phillies on. I had completed my first year of college. The movie was Speed. I missed the first 10 minutes. The rest was anticlimax. I'll see Sandra Bullock driving that bus even now and think of Al Cowlings. That's funny. Do you remember wondering whether the chase we were following might end through a wall or over a cliff? I was a junior when the verdict came down. The living room floor seemed to split in half. The black people on one side, everybody else over there. I was old enough to get that America had scarcely been eaten. Yet here we all were, cast out of some previously agreed upon place. Call it reality. We knew what probably happened that evening in Brentwood. We also knew that justice had been as symbolic as OJ had become under Johnny Cochran's sorcery. We knew the darkest comedy, that when this man could no longer run from, he found it convenient, redemptive to stand for. Interesting. So he's saying like OJ, when he was no longer a running back, making plays on the field and stuff like that, he decided to stand for his blackness or embrace his blackness. That's how I'm interpreting it. So we knew because we redeemed. A kind of justice had been served, and it reeked of brimstone. Yeah, yeah, yes, it did. All right. Nelson Moreno said, "To be honest, all I know about OJ is from a TV show starring Cuba Gooding Jr. I'm 24, but I look 16 when I'm shaving. We are like elves. Absolutely. Black don't." Nelson Moreno, rewind this live stream because I read like eulogy. But I mean, he was a great football player. Starred in some commercials and TV shows, broke down a lot of barriers for Black people in mainstream television and stuff like that. Was a abusive to his second wife, who was a young white woman who was a waitress, and was accused of killing her. I mean, that's OJ's story, right? I mean, you can summarize it in just a few sentences. Um, yeah, I also remember this about that afternoon's domestic and social rearrangement. The TV seemed fine. One man did this. One man believed he could transcend the tale of this place, that he could reject what a life here has tended to entail if you're black. One man scrambled our common sense, seduced our better natures and rational selves. One man confirmed anew that a black Icarus stands a reasonable chance of winding up Bigger Thomas. If you don't know that reference, Bigger Thomas is the main character from Native Son, Richard Wright's novel. One of my favorite books. I read it back in when I was in high school, right? But I need to read more. Shout out to Richard Wright. Uh, but the masterpiece that embodies the crises and dissonances of this man and his moments, that ruminates hard and rigorously on them, is actually about the man himself. Ezra Edelman's OJ Made in America, a documentary that at almost 8 hours could have gone on far longer and proceeds with such a sorrowful investigative weight that when it arrived in 2016, qualified as pre-humanist. It Interesting, pre-humanist. Never heard that word. So it's like describing, wrapping up his whole life before the man even died. Interesting. It offered the most suitable manner to mourn a seismic American joltingly. Interesting. Wesley Morris is a Times critic who writes about art, popular culture. I have to say, Wesley Morris is a very talented writer, but I think it's very dangerous to frame OJ as some revolutionary figure who's transcending racialism, transcending race, trying to be white, saying I'm not black, I'm OJ. I think that's very dangerous territory to get into if you're trying to do that. And framing OJ as the one black man who tried to live above his blackness. No, no. Martin Luther King lived above his blackness. Malcolm X lived above his blackness. Barack Obama lived above their blackness. And what did all of them do? They did not deny their blackness. Living above your blackness is when you succeed. It's black excellence essentially. It's when you succeed, achieve, thrive in a world that wants to see us die and suffer. That's a living beyond your blackness. OJ, I would argue, to some degree, stayed within his blackness because he fell into the tropes that the white supremacists accuse us of doing. You know, um, I firmly believe that OJ was the reason the white supremacists came up with their stupid phrase, "Burn the coal, pay the toll." Like, if you don't know what that means, it basically means that if a white woman sleeps or marries a black man, eventually that black man will get abusive with her or even kill her. That sort of stuff. This is like what the white supremacists say, even though the irony is it's all a projection because the number one killer of white women is other white men. Period. Nobody hurts white women more than white men. But apparently, to the white supremacists, whenever a white woman marries or dates or has sex with or lives with a black man, eventually she will get abused. As if that makes any sense. It doesn't at all. But continuing here, OJ fell into the same traps that the white supremacists imagine that black people to be, and therefore he did not transcend his blackness. He became the one of the most black men of all time. So I firmly disagree with this article that Mr. Wesley Morris wrote, even though I hope when I'm his age that I look this good, though my hairline is absolutely gone. It will not come back, and I'm not going to Turkey to get it back. So Nelson Moreno says, Simon, where were you when the verdict was announced? I was in preschool. I was in kindergarten, eating Snickers and taking midday naps. Nelson Moreno says, I think it's a defense mechanism. Absolutely. The white supremacists, anything the white supremacists say about black men is really a projection of themselves. If they say that we are lazy, they are literally talking about themselves because they are on 4chan. They are on 4chan in their neats in their home countries or in their mother's basements. If they say that we are violent, literally, we have a war in Ukraine going on right now. We have a war in Israel going on right now. Anywhere the white supremacists have gone, they have committed war and atrocity. If they say that we are sexual deviants, all we have to say is the Catholic Church. Are we really talking of anything the white supremacists say about black men is really a projection? And the same applies to OJ as well. Even though he uh, didn't do anything wrong, they still want to project their violent nature onto OJ Simpson. Continuing here, this will be the last article I will read today, and this is coming from the perspective of a black woman. Her name is Tressie McMillian Cottom. I haven't read her work before. This was published on April 11th, 2024. OJ Simpson's legacy won't be the one he may have imagined. OJ Simpson will be remembered not for his athletic ability, but as a spectacle. Most people tend to think the OJ story started when the Los Angeles police chased a white Ford Bronco down a deserted highway, but for Black America, the OJ spectacle began on March 3rd, 1991, and when Los Angeles police officers viciously beat Rodney King. Even though the beating was captured on videotape, the officers were acquitted and the city went up in flames. The OJ Simpson legend began when the nation decided that King must have done something to deserve his beating. Every generation of black people has a moment when this nation betrays them. Emmett Till, the bombing of American citizens in Philadelphia, white racist violence in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the executions of Malcolm X and later Trayvon Martin. Rodney King was my generation's. His beating showed me that a new day had not dawned in this country for black opportunity and acceptance. Simpson's legal team was able to paint a story in which he symbolized black martyrdom to black America because of such betrayals. For me, the moment America betrayed me as a black man is the Trayvon Martin case. Before that, the Sean Bell case. Before that, uh, damn, there was a case. I forgot exactly the name of the people. I forgot exactly the name of the people, and I'll never forget this video. One of the first times I saw the police kill a black man on video was there was this case of this black man with his hands up outside of a door and something like that. But then he like lunged at the police. The police like shot him and stuff like that. And there was also a dog next to him. So they let the black man stay on the floor after they murdered him. And then the police went and picked up the dog. The dog was not a police dog. It was his own dog. But the police ran off with the dog and left that black man to die on the floor. And plus now, you know, there have been so many other videos of police murdering black men in the streets that it's hard to keep track of all of them. But yeah, America let me down with Trayvon, Tamir Rice, um, Oscar Grant, Troy Davis, so many issues like that, right? Continuing here. Um, so, Nelson Moreno says people should have stood up behind Majors, not OJ. Okay, that's a good point. People should have stood up behind. Okay, I think the reason people didn't stand up behind Jonathan Majors though is because he had a white girlfriend. And the crazy thing is, when the Jonathan Majors case broke, people were saying like, "Why did he abuse that white girl?" And nobody had seen a picture of the girl before. Nobody knew exactly who his girl was, but we all knew it was a white woman because Jonathan Majors gives that vibe. You get what I'm saying? And I'm pretty sure if I were killed by the police, if I were abused by white supremacists, a lot of black folks would not stand up for me because my wife is white, right? And unfortunately, that's how a lot of people think. Even though, you know, I try to advocate for my people, I'm fighting against white supremacy in the best way I know how. I try to be a great black man. I try to not buy into conservative ways of thinking or talking points. I will never be a Republican. I will always try to read about our history, teach our history, try to achieve academic excellence and all that sort of stuff. But yet and still, to many black people, I am a coon. The same way Jonathan Majors is a coon to them as well. Uh, so that's all I can say about that. Anyway, Nelson Moreno says Jonathan Majors is greater than OJ. Okay. Anyway, yeah, when the Simpson verdict was announced in 1995, I was standing in the student union of my historically black college. My peers collectively sighed in relief when he was acquitted. But if the King verdict was the moment when my generation fell out of love with our country, Black America's relief at the Simpson verdict was the moment that white America fell out of love with the promise of diversity. Very interesting. Very interesting. Sadly, a woman paid the ultimate price for the O.J. Simpson legend, but by many accounts, O.J. abused Nicole Simpson for years. He got away with it through a kind of carte blanche usually reserved for powerful white men because his public mythology erased his private abuses. For Simpson, that must have felt like a certain type of moving on up. In a remarkable ESPN documentary OJ made in America, sociologist and activist remembers when Simpson declined to join a group of civil rights, saying, "I'm not black, I'm OJ." Captures the essence of OJ Simpson, the man and the public figure. He wanted to be above the rules, not because of what he was, but because of who he was. It's the height of karmic irony. Then that what ultimately made Simpson special was the way his blackness, that socially constructed distance from the white acceptance he so clearly craved, will forever define his legacy. Interesting, interesting. Like I said, OJ became the blackest man in America. He said, "I'm not black, I'm OJ," and God said, "Okay," and made him the face of black men for a certain time, right? And yeah, I really want to talk about how the OJ case made white folks feel. Here's what I think about this. I don't care. I don't care what they feel. I just want them to learn from this. I want them to learn from the OJ situation that if we want justice in America, we need to reform the justice system. There have been too many black men who have been executed unfairly in America for crimes that they did not commit. How do we know? Because so many people every single year get found innocent through DNA evidence while they are on death row. Their whole trial was a sham. The charges were a sham, and those charges are thrown out. And yet and still we still have white folks today who say that our justice system is perfect and it's the best in the world when it's absolutely not. It is not that at all. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about OJ. This was an interesting live stream. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned from it. Shout out to Nelson Moreno. Shout out to Craig Mack. Shout out to everybody who's watching. Shout out to TCRVD and anybody else who's tuned in. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing more live streams possibly today for other topics. My name is Simon Hill, and peace.